different. The other thing about social media is when we're talking with our friends and our friends agree with us and we agree with them and they agree with us and we agree with them and they agree with us. And guess what happens? We become very focused on those particular things that we're interested in. And we don't get any other news. And we begin to polarize ourselves. In fact, what happened over the last 6 months was that our country itself became so polarized because people were only listening to the viewpoints that supported their own viewpoint. And so we got angry at people, but it sort of drove this need to be on social media and see what people are saying. And then we got into big arguments about it. And it became something that was an ugly behavior for most of us. In fact, there was a lot of increases in anger and frustration that people had following social media because of what? Because of this polarization that happens where we only get likes and discussions from people that are like us. So when we look at the curse of social media, one of the problems with social media is, especially with girls, it seems to affect their well-being. What? Look at this poor little girl sitting on the steps, being on social media. How old do you think she is? Maybe she's like 5 years old. Okay. So probably the most interesting thing that's happened on Facebook over the last however many years is this wonderful little button called a like button. Okay. And a like button does what? Well, a like button tells you that people like what you have to say, or they like what you're thinking, or they like your post, or they like your picture. Okay. And for some of us, especially kids, this need to be liked becomes a confirmation of our identity. So if I get enough likes, then people really like me. But it's not me that they're liking, it's a post that they're liking. Unfortunately, when we're alone, like we were at COVID, when we don't have a whole lot of face-to-face contact, that confirmation becomes something that we use to confirm our identity. In fact, the guy that actually did the like button on Facebook has come out and said he wishes he could change it. And he wishes he could get rid of it. He wishes he never started it. Because it does a whole lot to make us feel either good or bad. The other thing about social media is there's this pressure to respond to others immediately. Okay, I don't know about you, but that phone goes off in my pocket, or I hear my phone go off, or I get some sort of, and our phones, of course, have all the different kind of bells and whistles that tell us, well, this is your Facebook post, this is your Instagram post, this is a text message, this is an email. And if you don't turn off all those notifications, pretty soon you're inundated with them. And what happens is, I don't know about you, but every time you hear one of those noises, you get a little bit anxious or excited. Okay, I got to go check that. And what happens to your brain is it's almost like that noise hijacks your brain, doesn't it? It hijacks it and it says, you need to go pay attention to this because there might be something good there. Or you need to go pay attention to this because there might be something important. And so we're over here doing this, but at the same time, we're kind of got divided attention and we want to go listen to whatever it is over there. So there's a pressure to respond immediately. And especially when you're on Facebook, there's this pressure to say something creative or funny or entertaining. I know that for myself. When I do Facebook posts, if I do a Facebook post for FA or something, what I end up doing is I agonize over it for the longest time. Why? Because what I think about is, oh, this has to be good. This has to be funny. It has to be, something that people are going to like. It has to be something that's going to get me some likes. So there's a pressure to do something that's entertaining. We also have little face-to-face interaction. Okay, by the way, you notice the title under, or the caption on top of all of this. What happens with social media affects our well-being. What is our well-being? It's just that, feeling well emotionally, right? So this face-to-face, this little decrease in this face-to-face decrease, or the reaction, or our interaction, and we decrease that. What happens when we have face-to-face interaction, and what especially happens to teens when they have face-to-face interaction, is that they learn social skills. Okay, we learn social skills based on our face-to-face interactions with people. Why? Because we look at their faces and we watch what they're doing and how they're reacting to us and how they respond to us. And if we don't get that, we miss out on some valuable skills. There's also a loss of self-control when we get too involved with social media. What does that mean? And less emotional stability. All right, so they did some studies and they found that kids that use social media and they do it an hour or a little bit more than an hour, they measured it and they found that there's this loss of self-control. What's self-control? It basically means I can't control myself from checking on Facebook, or I can't control myself from answering that buzzing in my pocket. And my emotions run with whatever information I'm getting from social media. So if I've got a bunch of likes, I'm happy. If I don't know anyone liking my stuff, or if other people have posted really great things and I don't, then I'm going to feel really low. Now, I do counseling as well as teaching. And so one of the things that I have found with lots and lots and lots of clients is that people come in with psychological disorders, depression, anxiety, spend a lot of time on social media. And what are they doing? They're evaluating their lives on the basis of what everyone else is doing. Based on what? Their face-to-face interactions with them? No, based on what they see on social media. That's how I evaluate my life. That's a sad indictment, isn't it? Evaluating our lives based on what other people are doing on social media. If we spend all that time doing that, we're really not comparing ourselves to reality. We're comparing ourselves to what someone else put up as a picture and said, this is my life. And it may only have been a very small snippet of their life. Those individuals who spend 7+ hours a day on social media are more likely to be depressed and anxious. I would encourage you, just for a week, measure how much time you spend on social media in your week. Go ahead, just do it. See what happens. See how much time you're spending on social media and evaluate your mood after you get off of social media. Is it positive? Is it negative? And for some of you, it may not be anything. It might be fine. You might get off of there and say, oh, I feel great. I can tell you, though, from personal experience, when I spend time on social media, I get off sometimes feeling yucky, sometimes feeling angry. Why? Why does this thing that's in front of us all the time make us angry? And I think you have to ask yourself that. What is going on here that's making me angry? There's an effect to our well-being. There's a decrease in us feeling good about things when we're spending a lot of time on social media. Okay, now, I'm going to talk about true connection for a minute, and then I'm going to go back to Dawn, because both of us are going to share some things with you about our own personal experiences with social media. And then what I'll do is I'll come back at the end and we're going to talk about some suggestions about what you can do. Now, look, I realize that most of us are not going to be putting our devices away and saying, all right, whoa, you cured me. I'm never going on social media again. I realize nobody's going to do that. So this talk is not for you to, I'm not trying to convince you to stay away from social media. What I'm trying to get you to do is look at the reality of what social media does, and look at the amount of time you spend on social media and some of the side effects of doing that. Okay. So some of inoculating somebody from a disease, if we want to call this as disease, as Dawn did, some of the inoculation is knowledge. And if you know what happens to you when you're watching and getting on there, then I think it's a really good thing to evaluate and say, is this really something that I want to keep in my life as much as I'm using it? So you don't have to stop, but maybe reducing it. Okay, so let's look at that. What is true connection? So we've got social media connection. So what's social media connection? We already know what that is. Okay, we get to see everybody's best faces. We get to hear everyone's opinions. People get to be anonymous when they give you their opinion. And so we feel like we have this sort of like protection, so we can say anything, because after all, we're not saying it to somebody's face. We're just sort of throwing it out there for the general public. So we have this sort of anonymity that we can do on social media. But you know, when we have a true connection, we have some really valuable things. When we have true connection and we're meeting face to face with people, oftentimes we have the opportunity to feel like we're really understood for who we are. If I give you my opinion and you and I are face to face, then you get to ask me questions, I get to ask you questions, and we get to try and understand each other. I feel valued and validated when I'm standing there talking to you, because hopefully what we're going to do is we're going to share some things. And when we do that, we're really truly communicating with another person. We're sitting down, we're talking to them. We get to see their body language. We get to hear the inflection in their voice. We get to do all of those wonderful things and more, because we begin to talk openly and honestly to other people. And we get to kind of connect with our own feelings, and they get to connect with their own feelings. That's a really nice thing to do. How often have you had a Facebook conversation like that? I would venture to guess that it's probably zero. All right. Because you're not doing that kind of communication. Our loss of connection is a contributing factor to addiction. Now, there are a lot of people who have compared the use of Facebook to an addiction, the use of social media to an addiction. Why? Because when you get on Facebook, what you are doing is your brain releases a chemical called dopamine, which is the same chemical that's released when you're addicted to something and you take that drug. It's sort of like, whoa, this is really exciting. I can't wait to get on there and see what these people have to say. And that's what's going on. And so the farther you are away from that, your brain says, you know what, we ought to do that again. That was fun. I like this. This is fun. Let's do it again. And so your brain keeps telling you, let's do this again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And pretty soon you become addicted. And so you just check Facebook for just 5 minutes, or you just check it for a few seconds just because you want to see what's going on. And it becomes a contributing factor. And we can really call it kind of like an addiction. True connection improves our immune function and it decreases depression. We just talked about the fact that Facebook does not necessarily do that. Spending enough time on there will increase depression. And I would imagine, in some sense of the word, it might even decrease our immune function. By the way, without true connection, without real face-to-face connections with people, we become numb, we ache, and we're more likely to hurt others. Hurt others, yeah. We're more likely to say things to people when we don't have face-to-face connections that we would not ever say. And we're more likely to say things to people across Facebook that we wouldn't say to others. We're more likely to pick a fight. We're more likely to tell somebody our opinion with kind of bravado, like, yeah, this is what I believe. And let me tell you, I got 15 other people that are going to like this. And now you know how that break or that, feeling of being alone gets fostered by using Facebook. Okay. So I've given you all the negatives. I spent 5 minutes giving you the positives. I've given you some of the negatives. Let's talk about how two of us, Don and myself, have kind of said, okay, we're going to step back. So I'll let Don tell you a little bit about what he did, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what I did. And then we'll talk about some ways to make those decisions yourself. Okay, by the way, if you've got any questions about any of this or any questions about this research, I would be more than happy to share this with anyone. It's pretty fascinating to look at exactly those, what Facebook can do. So, all right, Don, go ahead. I'm going to leave the PowerPoint up and I'll let you talk.
There we go. Everyone hear me? Okay, so I agree 1,000% with Bonnie talking about it as a addiction. And I think to some extent I became addicted. And it's not really a virus type of model, and that might have been a misleading title for the talk, but it's what we had at the time. So when I was talking to Bonnie about when do you know it's addiction, one of the things that she had said to me was that when your normal life and behaviors start to change because of your activity. So, and keep in mind that this message that I'm about to send comes from a man who didn't watch TV for 30 years and didn't have my family involved with anything like that, and kept really close tabs on the media, and even then slipped up at times, but it was like I knew better. And when it comes to being connected to the Facebook and things like that, I knew better because I had seen and I understood all this stuff about likes and dislikes and all that stuff. But for me, it was, I was getting this connection and I was getting all these likes on my posts, and I was seeing and talking to people that I hadn't talked to in a while. And I basically had every reason in the book for this being a good, I would even help people that were over relying on Facebook. And then when problems started to show up, like I'd get less done during the day, less planning, less organizing. Bonnie hit it good: aggression, depressed, anxious, less self-control. I really needed to check my Facebook and look at things and discuss things. And a lot of times it actually didn't feel bad at all. It felt pretty good. And that's when Bonnie was mentioning about the dopamine. Yeah, I definitely felt good frequently when I was in the practice of doing that. And then I started getting phone calls from one of my daughter-in-laws that says, she doesn't post anything. She says, "What in the heck are you doing? That was that post has been circulated for 40, since the beginning of the internet. I mean, check into things." I was really unnerving her how caught up I was. And then finally, my youngest son, John, comes to me and he kind of challenges me to cut back my Facebook time. Now here's my baby coming back to me, talking to me about what dad ought to do. And I accepted the challenge, and he put this app on my phone called Stay Focused, I think is the name of the app. And I didn't really know what he was doing, but in about 3 minutes, he had an app on my phone that would limit my FaceTime. It would limit me to 10 minutes per day. And for a couple of weeks, it was pretty bad because I'd be right in the middle of something and then blip, says, stay focused. And that was the end of it until the next day. So that made a big difference, but I still wanted that feeling. So then YouTube news seemed to do the same thing. And then you could do a live chat and you could do other things. And then that really kind of took the place. And this is just a little side, but that reminded me of a scripture passage that I'm going to share just the gist of it. It's in the book of Matthew, and it talks about the evil spirit that you've taken out of the house. You've swept out the spirit, and the spirit comes back to the swept house with 7 other more evil spirits than himself, and then you have a very troubled house and a troubled man. And that is something that'll lead into this next piece after Bonnie shares her thing, and that is that in the process of any regulating or reducing your FaceTime or your Facebook time or your social media time or YouTube or whatever that connection or addiction is that you have, that you really got to put in its place the opposite. You have to put in the true connection, and you have to do it immediately, if not before you start cutting back. Otherwise, you just have an empty hole, and you still have the addiction. So that's where I would leave it for you, Bonnie. Oh, you're still muted. Okay, there we go. Bonnie?
Guys,
No,
I was
no.
having trouble unmuting myself with the PowerPoint presentation up there. Yeah. So my story is a little different. It's not quite as dramatic as Dawn's.
Oh yeah, it was dramatic. I only give you half of it.
Okay. I was going to say it's not quite as dramatic as Dawn's. So, I found myself being on Facebook, and I didn't even start my own Facebook account. I had 2 friends that thought it would be really funny for me to have a Facebook account. This was years ago. And so they set up a Facebook account for me for my birthday. Nice thing to do for your birthday. And of course, I started using it a little bit, but it was never all that much. And until I started to realize that I was spending more and more time on Facebook, and really spending a lot of time. And as I said before, it became this huge time sink. So it was, not just a half an hour, it would be an hour and a half. And I'd realized that I had spent time scrolling through newsfeed and then following links here and there and everywhere. And it was okay for a little while, but I spent an awful lot of time. And then every evening it became, that's going to be my Facebook time. Well, I was starting to read less. I like to read, I like reading all kinds of things. So I was reading less. I was to this. And then I found myself getting anxious about looking at Facebook, really feeling anxious and feeling like if I didn't post something, then, oh my goodness, what was going to happen? So I'd always have to post things. And, I'm not one of those people that does all kinds of exciting things. So I would post things about my yard or my garden or my kids, and and that's okay. But it was always, again, this idea that it had to be a really good post. It had to be something that was going to be entertaining, or it had to be something that people were going to like. I could never really be who I wanted to be. And so this past year, when I started to see some of my siblings post things, their opinions about things, their, and some of it was about COVID, some of it was about other things, and I thought, goodness, I just disagree. And so I either had this thought, either I'm going to start posting things and getting into arguments, or I'm going to take a step back, because I would read what their posts were and I would get really angry and really frustrated. And I decided that, you know what, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to dislike them. I mean, these are siblings. I don't want to dislike them, because up until, the past year, we've really had pretty much in common, So I thought, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to step back, because it's not necessary for me to do that. It's not necessary for me to share what I think. And it's not even wise. It really is, because I don't feel like it's my job to get into an argument and convince everybody that my opinion is right. So I took a step back, and I figured, if I need to know something, then, if there's something that my kids post, they'll let me know. If there's something that someone else posts and I should know about it, eventually I'm going to find out about it. And so I took a step back, and I have not regretted it one bit. Do I go on Facebook? Occasionally. Very rarely do I now, because I feel like whenever I go on, I come off feeling worse than positive. Appreciate the people that are on my Facebook. Plus, the other thing is, I was in communication with people that I hadn't been in communication with for a long time, years. And all of a sudden, these were my Facebook friends. And I thought, if I didn't really want to be friends with them all these years, why am I friends with them now? Why am I reading everything that's going on in their lives? Should it be now? Are there other people that really maybe I should spend my focus on, or spend my thoughts on? And so I really took that step back. All right, now, Dawn, do you want me to? I think I'm going to start sharing the stuff about the inoculation. Yeah.
During that theory, that a process, yes. I just don't want to run out of time.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead,
No,
Dawn.
I'm more concerned about questions from.
Okay.
anyone.
All right. I'm going to share this really quickly. Okay. So are you all going to do what Dawn and I did and just move away from Facebook? And no. Okay. But I think there are some things that we can do to regulate our own behavior when it comes to Facebook and social media. Okay. And again, it doesn't always have to be Facebook. That's not really all of it. Okay. I know there's lots of social media platforms. So there's this wonderful cure that we talk about in psychology. It's called stress inoculation theory. Okay. So it's known as SIT. That's a nice way to think about it. So what is SIT? Okay. I think most of us use social media to, we think, calm ourselves when we're stressed. So we do it as something fun. I don't think we do social media because it's torturous. Okay. I think if it was, we wouldn't do it. So oftentimes we do it when we're stressed. The problem is it doesn't always alleviate our stress as we would like it to. So one of the things that we can do is to get ourselves to prepare ourselves to handle stressful situations a little bit better. Okay. And also preparing ourselves to figure out how we're going to we're going to keep ourselves away from the temptation of social media. Right? So what are we going to do? How are we going to, okay, if we decide we're not going to use social media for a little while, or we're going to back up, how do we do that? Because we're going to be stressed. We're going to be feeling like anxious. Well, what are we going to do instead? So here's the puzzle that has to be solved. How can I interact with people in a true connection way? How do I do that? If I'm going to back away from this social media connection, if I'm going to try to interact with people in a different way, if I'm going to do something that is more positive for myself and is going to build better, better communication skills and help me, then how do I do it? So here's some thoughts of rehearsing things. Practice talking with others and being yourself. Yes, how about that? Do you ever do that? Are you ever really yourself when you're talking to people anymore? Have you done that for a while? What would you say to somebody? How would you share your feelings with people? How would you really share what you're thinking? And maybe you'd have to learn how to ask people questions and really get re-engaged with them. How about setting some reasonable limits for yourself and regulating your own behavior? I've heard of people that have said, okay, 1 day a week, I'm not on social media, or 2 days a week, I'm not on social media. I have a friend who's an attorney, and he does not answer his cell phone or answer emails on the weekends at all. That's it. That's what he does. The rest of the week, he's available, but then on Saturday and Sunday, he doesn't do anything. I had a friend who challenged her kids. She actually paid them $100 to go off of social media for a month. Okay. So stepping away for a period of time. And then, as Don said, putting that true connection back in your life. So being engaged with people. Now, I know in COVID, that's not always an easy thing to do, but you can talk with people on the phone. You can also see people sometimes, and it's going to get warm outside. You can see people at a distance and talk to people. You can write them a letter. Whoa, that's an amazing thought. Okay. You could, there are ways of being engaged with people that you really care about, not people that are your friends on Facebook necessarily, but people that you really care about, and engaging yourself with them. And then establishing some rewards for when you do regulate yourself. In other words, I don't know that your mom or dad are going to pay you $100 to get off of social media for a month, but there's other things that you can do. So how do I wrap this up? Should you put away your Facebook forever? Should you never get back on again? Are there some advantages to social media? Of course there are. Okay. I think that the problem with social media is that it tends to take over our lives. And the more we engage with it, the more it takes over our lives. And the more we become isolated in a group that believes the same way that we do and isn't really looking outside. Okay. That's the problem that I have with social media. I think if it allows you to open yourself up and look around you a little bit more and engage with other people that are not like you, okay, then it's good. But if it doesn't, if all it does is it closes you in and you tend to become like all of those people you're with, and you choose your friends that are just like you, and all you do is communicate in the same way, I think it can be a really negative thing. And I also think it can be a huge time waster when you might be doing some other things that would really establish some true connections in your life. Okay. Any questions? Comments? Wow, we got a lot of people who are very quiet. Any comments? Please feel free to unmute yourself if you have comments or questions. I'd be more than happy to entertain them. I'm sure Don would too.
Hi, Bonnie. This is Patty.
Hi, Patty. Yeah.
Yeah, I really think that is a timely, this is a timely talk because it has been something that I think all of us have been, maybe a little guilty of, especially maybe earlier in the COVID when you're trying to figure out things to do to distract yourself rather than deal with the things that are around you. So I really appreciate all the things that you and Dawn have shared. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Patty. I appreciate your comment. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I thought it was timely too, because I think for all of us, again, me, I'm included in this. We really do end up falling into that. And it was so easy to, because it was a way of keeping connections. And we've lost those. So most of us are scrambling to try to find ways to keep connections. And unfortunately, this now becomes our go-to. I can't help but think, okay, so in 1917, when there was a pandemic, what did people do then? They wrote letters. They read books. They connected with their neighbors. I don't know, maybe with face masks on, I'm not sure. But nevertheless, we're the first generation that has done something like this, but I don't necessarily know that it's always the best thing that we've done. I think there are some disadvantages to it. I really do. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Comments, questions? I know you're not all going home and saying, okay, that's it. I'm throwing away my Facebook account. I'm getting rid of it.
I did. I took it off the phone. One of my sons helped me clean up my phone to stop the temptation. Doesn't stop it, but and then start to put back in its place better activities.
Yeah. I like what Don said. His oldest son put it best. Dad, I value my time, my life so much more than time on media. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Somebody else was going to say something.
I just wanted to say that I liked your general well-being post so much that I posted it on Facebook while you were talking, just to let everybody know that we need to be aware of that.
Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate it. Howard, you were going to say something.
A lot of us as homeschooling parents made the decision that our kids weren't going to spend any time watching TV, or at least only watch educational things on TV. I know my wife and I, the smartest decision we ever made when our baby was maybe sick, our oldest was about 6 months old, is we took the TV as an experiment and put it up in the attic, and we didn't get it down for another 15 years. And when we did get it down, it didn't work. And it was the best thing we ever did because our kids had so much time. They had time to read, to listen to reading. None of them got addicted to TV. We didn't use TV as a babysitter, which is very tempting. And so we made that decision as homeschooling parents because TV had already been around. We already understood the dangers. And now this new social media problem is coming up. And that didn't exist when we were kids, and we're just beginning to understand it.
I think that's a great comment. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's all new. And so that becomes the next babysitter. We let kids, spend time on social media. That's right, Howard. It does. That becomes our next, okay, so let the kids do that. The idea is, well, they're communicating with their friends. How else are they going to communicate with their friends? But there's lots of other ways. I don't know who this is, the S family, suggestions for helping kids learn to talk with others they don't know. Yeah, you know what? I do have some suggestions for that. Let them practice with you. Okay. In other words, let them practice. So how would you do that? You can do a role play with kids. All right. So you've got somebody out there. So just being able to say, okay, so if you're going to go meet somebody you don't know, how would you engage them in conversation? And you as a parent probably know how to do that. Help them along the way as their parent, as their teacher, to be able to see that there are things you can say to people. Hey, how are you doing? Ask them about things that they enjoy. I always find the best way to communicate with people I don't know is to ask them questions.
I wanted to say something on that, Bonnie. One of the things that I did is that I required my children to do that. And one of the ways that they didn't really like in the beginning, but at the square dances that we would have, they would want to dance with the girl that they wanted to dance with. That's it. And the requirement was at every square dance, you would find somebody that you do not know and does not know how to dance, and you will talk to them and greet them and meet them, and everything will be fine. And then you can go dance with anybody you want to. And in one case, the girl that was asked to dance became his wife. But it was like, that was a rule though. That was what, before you got before you get the ice cream, you eat the peas, type of thing like that.
Yeah.
Because they weren't always comfortable with doing that.
Yeah, that's great. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you guys. We're going to have to end the session. It's 5 of. I really appreciate everybody's feedback here, and I appreciate the comments. Thank you. I hope this was helpful.